But first, one more thing about American operations in Afghanistan. New reports that prisoner abuse is still happening at a U.S. facility there, specifically at a previously undisclosed facility reportedly run by U.S. Special Operations Forces near the known prison at Bagram Air Base. Two teenagers telling the Washington Post that they were taken to what they called the Black Jail. They say they were interrogated, beaten, sleep-deprived, and photographed naked. Three other prisoners, one of whom was captured in June of this year, corroborating that report, telling the New York Times that they could hear other prisoners being beaten in the same facility. It's also reported that prisoners were not made available to the Red Cross, which in international prison rules is pretty close to a cardinal sin. Among the first executive orders signed by this new president was a directive that the CIA should close its black site prisons. That directive would not have applied to a facility like this one in Afghanistan, run by the military's equally secretive Special Operations Command.
What are your thoughts on the possibility, apparently, that he's going to send 30,000 more troops?
Well, it angers me.
With an exit date.
Well,
apparently.
it still angers me because it reminds me a great deal of Vietnam. I mean, the Russians couldn't beat them. The English couldn't beat them over there. You are not going to get a military solution, in my opinion, in Afghanistan. It's impossible. And yet, we're just like Vietnam. Are we propping up a phony government like we did in Vietnam? Remember, if they were, the United States blocked free elections in Vietnam. Had there been elections in Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh would have won.
There is no military solution in Iraq, and there never was. I will begin to remove our troops from Iraq immediately.
And then that went to 16 months. And now he's going to add, they're saying, another 30,000 or more troops to Afghanistan.
And speaking of Afghanistan, as President Obama decides on whether to greatly expand the U.S. military presence there, it turns out the United States has quietly increased the number of support troops in Afghanistan. The Washington Post reports that the U.S. is deploying at least 13,000 more troops. These forces were not mentioned by the president last March when he announced an additional 21,000 combat troops. 68,000 Americans will be in Afghanistan by the year's end, and that is double the number when President Bush left office.
As Commander-in-Chief, I have determined that it is in our vital national interest to send an additional 30,000 U.S. troops to Afghanistan.
Tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern, this year's Nobel Peace Laureate escalated the war in Afghanistan for the second time in just the first year of his presidency. In March, you will recall, this president announced that his new administration had concluded a careful policy review of the options available in Afghanistan then, and had decided to send 21,000 more troops. To put that first escalation in context, this is what American troop levels were like 8 years ago, the first December after we invaded. See that little tiny blip down there on the left? This is how they changed over time, all through the Bush administration and through, frankly, the election of Mr. Obama. This is what's happened during President Obama's first year in office. And this is what he's just announced he's going to do by next summer.
At the center of a heated debate in Germany's parliament as the government decides whether to extend their Afghan troop deployment. It's a decision complicated by the resignation today of the army's chief of staff. Now, he was forced to step down after politically embarrassing footage emerged of a German-ordered airstrike that killed dozens of Afghan civilians.
This is the view from an American F-15 fighter jet over northern Afghanistan on September the 4th. Down below, you can see two fuel trucks with people around them. The trucks have been hijacked by the Taliban and are stuck in the sand. Then, on the orders of a German NATO commander, the US jet attacks. This was the result on the ground. It's thought that dozens of Afghan civilians were killed in the airstrike. The military and the government had tried to conceal the fact civilians had been killed.
Today's most shocking revelation was very clearly that the Defence Ministry leadership knew very quickly after the bombing incidents of September 4th that there had been many civilian deaths and yet denied this fact to the German public.
The German government has a problem. It's under increasing pressure from the United States to send more troops to Afghanistan. But at the same time, 2/3 of the German public want to bring the soldiers home.
In Brussels right now, the Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has secured a commitment from NATO allies for some 7,000 additional troops. that will help fill the gap between the 40,000 troops requested by the U.S. military commander, General Stanley McChrystal, and the 30,000 additional U.S. troops being deployed by President Obama.
When President Obama announced his Afghanistan strategy last week, he announced a fast surge of 30,000 troops, but then also promised at least a starting date for when troops would come home. It seemed then that the big issue that remained to be clarified was whether just the 30,000 extra troops would start to come home then, or whether all of our troops in Afghanistan would start to come home in 2011. Turns out that worry is beside the point. The real outstanding question is whether or not any of our troops will definitely start to come home in 2011, or whether that's just a maybe, a hope, a might do. The day after the president's speech, it seemed like that withdrawal date, that starting to leave date, was for real.
Mr. Chairman, it is July 2011 is when we expect the transition process to begin. Our view is that...
Is that date conditions-based or not?
No, sir.
No, sir. Not conditions-based. We're just coming home. July 2011, no matter what. That same day, CBS's Chip Reid reported that he asked Press Secretary Robert Gibbs whether the July 2011 date for beginning to withdraw troops was locked in. Reid reported Gibbs's response as, quote, "There is no flexibility. Troops will start coming home in July 2011, period. It's etched in stone. Gibbs even said he had the chisel." That was Wednesday. By this weekend, the July 2011 date for leaving was apparently no longer locked in, and any talk of a firm deadline, pshaw.
And again, there's no timeline, no ramp, nothing like that.
We're not talking about an exit strategy or a drop-dead deadline.
We have strategic interests in South Asia that should not be measured in terms of finite times.
I think that, again, I don't want to put a deadline on it, okay?
So forget that whole deadline etched in stone thing. Between last Wednesday and this weekend, someone lost his chisel. And we, as a nation, apparently lost our Afghanistan exit date. By the time President Obama's new plan for Afghanistan is implemented, there will be 100,000 U.S. troops there, which means that President Obama will have roughly tripled the number of U.S. troops that were in Afghanistan when he took office. That's the most talked about, but the second most sobering set of numbers of the whole new Afghanistan policy. The most sobering, and perhaps overlooked, is that as we look to get up to 100,000 troops in Afghanistan, turns out we've already got more than 100,000 contractors there. Yeah, U.S. Central Command telling Talking Points memo that the number of contractors in Afghanistan is 104,000 now, and that number has grown by 30,000 just in the past 6 months. And the number of contractors is only expected to grow further along with the new troop increase.
President Obama has ordered an increase in drone strikes inside Pakistan near the Afghan border. The expansion of the CIA program was confirmed to CNN today by a U.S. official.
Some pretty stunning revelations about the most notorious defense contractor of them all, Blackwater, and its founder, Eric Prince. A new article in Vanity Fair by Adam Soralski, which we've linked at our website, says this about conservative billionaire Eric Prince. Quote, "For the past 6 years, he appears to have led an astonishing double life. Publicly, he has served as Blackwater's CEO and chairman. Privately and secretly, he's been doing the CIA's bidding, helping to craft, fund, and execute operations ranging from inserting personnel into denied areas, places U.S. intelligence has trouble penetrating, to assembling hit teams targeting al-Qaeda members and their allies. Eric Prince, according to sources with knowledge of his activities, has been working as a CIA asset. In a word, as a spy. Despite the company's denials, Blackwater totally is operating in Pakistan itself right now. What are you able to report that they're doing there?
For years, Blackwater has been operating under the cover of a training program. We heard a lot about training from the president since his plan was addressed. Blackwater is training the Pakistani Frontier Corps, which is a federal paramilitary force that is hunting down high-value targets in the Frontier province. A former Blackwater executive told me that the line is being crossed, that Blackwater guys are actually going out on these raids. Parallel parallel to that, Blackwater is at the center of a U.S. Special Forces, not CIA, but U.S. Special Forces drone bombing campaign inside of Afghanistan. They are also helping to plan targeted assassinations, snatch and grab operations, not just in Pakistan, Rachel, but also against the Islamic movement of Uzbekistan, inside of Uzbekistan as well.